I'm going to start off a little bit light today. Oh, please start us off. I think we got three over here.
So, it's funny, but it's also serious at the same time. So I had an interview once where I was looking for a different career opportunity. I met a director at another company and went through all of my credentials. It was really good. And he said, "Tell me about some of the challenges you faced in your career and in your job." And I said, "Well, there was this one time we did a certain system that a certain thing, but it didn't save the passwords in the right way, so you could just read them all. And so we tried to fix that." He goes, "So why did that problem happen?" And I said to him, I said, "Don't look at me, I didn't cause that." He goes, "There's nobody else here. I have to look at you. So you're talking about this problem. Tell me how it happened. Where did it begin? What was the reason behind it?" So it's funny reflecting on it, but it wasn't funny at the time when I had to be the one bearing the brunt of the burden of somebody else's, a scenario caused by somebody else. So just something to think about. When you answer questions, reflect on the totality of what they're asking, not just the point of your experience.
Anybody else want to share?
So this. Well, I think I can talk loud enough. Everybody can hear me. So, mine actually wasn't in an interview. It was actually a resume that I received one time. So basically, it was a two-page letter that someone had written, and I wish I'd saved it. But it was basically an older gentleman telling us that he was 95 years old, but he came from a very healthy family, and most of the people lived to 105, and he didn't really know what the job was, but he really wanted to work really hard, and he had a good work ethic and all that, and it was just this 2 pages of I mean, it was really touching. As far as getting a letter from someone who really wanted to work, so I think that's.
God works.
So anyway, yeah, I thought that that was funny. I've gotten a lot of funny resumes over the years, and I think one of the things I was telling someone earlier today is that your resume is really the first thing that someone's going to see of you, and the goal of that resume is to get you to a job interview. It's not where you put everything that you've ever done in your whole life, and it's not the 2-page letter of someone telling you the story of his life and his 95 years on this earth. But it's really just to get to that interview stage. So I've seen a lot of resume don'ts, and probably all of us could sit up here and tell you, different things. I remember someone sent me one that said she worked in the Philippines, but she didn't write Philippines. She wrote Philippians, like the Bible book. So just a life story that you want to be really careful about your resumes.
I was gonna tell him, but it's his story.
Yeah, so I guess I'll so Dan and I have been interviewing candidates for the last couple of months now, and I was actually conducting an interview with another group, and first time ever this has ever happened to me. When conducting an interview, you were asking some questions, and the candidate obviously was very nervous, right? But we got to the second or third question, and he didn't quite understand what the question was, right? So we're trying to explain it to him and repeat it. And again, these interviews mainly on Zoom. So after we explained the question to him, he's like, "Okay, hold on a second." And you see him reach forward, right, on the camera, and he left the meeting. Right? He left the interview, and I've never seen that happen before. So we called him, tried calling him a couple of times, never responded. We've never heard back from him at all since. But the moral of the story there, though, is just to keep in mind, like, no matter how bad the interview is going, just follow through. Make sure you don't because that person is probably never going to get an opportunity with any of our departments ever again, right? But I have had situations where interviews were going not so great, but then at the end, when they ask us a question, those questions kind of blew us away, where we're like, wow, this person knows what he's talking about. So just make sure that no matter how nervous you are and how badly you might think the interview's going, just stick it through to the end.
Don't rage quit at the job interview. Save that for the game.
So moving forward, what would you say in your specific profession is the most important 1 or 2 questions that really can land a solid interview?
guys can hear me, right?
Yeah, I think we're good.
Yeah. I'm not perfect at technology. I work for a tech company, I know that. So one thing that, especially in public health and research, right, I focus on patient outcomes, I wanna save lives. I think, if you don't have canned responses, because especially in research and where you're contributing to science, if you don't have a passion for it, it's gonna come through, right? If your mom told you to become this, or your dad said, well, we're a family of that, it comes through and it's very, it's very obvious. And I don't want somebody who's not gonna have an intrinsic motivation to be the best that they can be in the profession that I'm gonna be. And that kind of goes across, like it doesn't only have to be public health, right? But definitely in public health, specifically in research, if you're not well-versed in statistics and study design, if you're not well-versed in what a patient outcome can be, just because you're a data scientist doesn't make you qualified. Just because you're a statistician doesn't make you qualified to be a biostatistician. And I've had statisticians go, oh, look, I'm like, no, this is wrong. No, it's not. I tested by math, and they were not humble enough to look back. And I can tell you, I know it's wrong because you can't weigh a negative number on this earth, right? You have to have a positive weight, even if it's 2 ounces, right? And they had negative 22 pounds. Like, sorry, bro, that's not gonna cut it, right? And so, especially for me, if you're not willing to QC your work, and it's not an arrogance thing, it's not I'm gonna prove you wrong. This actually is a safeguard because the drug that you're gonna put out in a pharmaceutical company, or the vaccine that you're gonna make, or the guideline that you follow to treat a patient's disease relies on the math that shows you objectively this is the right way to go. Right? So literally, don't say, like, I don't know why I have to learn calculus. No, you have to learn calculus because if you want to contribute to today's society in an effective and objective and safe way, you need the math to help you get there. Right? And if your math is wrong, right, the rocket's not going to launch or the drug isn't going to work.
You guys got that? Right, and I think just to kind of paraphrase a little bit, she focused on 2 aspects of actually your presentation. One is the technical aspect, right? Having the actual language, the buzzwords, the math correct, whatever it is on the technical side, but also having that character aspect where this person wasn't actually able to accept, right? And I would think those 2 components are always in play when somebody's observing you as a person. Anyone else want to contribute?
We need to call an audible. I need Brother Akbar to come over here. For 2 reasons. I feel very uncomfortable with you being in the audience. Because if you follow him on LinkedIn, he shares a lot of these kinds of things. So you have to be. I can't be here with you.
I think we'll engage the audience a little bit.
I can see from here.
We can engage the audience,
I
huh?
want him to be here. No, please, because he should add value to this.
We're wasting time. Please sit down.
Okay.
You can call on me.
I'll call on you, I got you. I know he's there. I know who he is too. Okay?
This is for everybody else, please. This is the forum for it.
So for me, when I'm sitting down speaking with someone, I really want to understand, when we ask you the questions, I really want to understand your thought process, what's going through your mind when you're explaining that situation to us. A lot of our questions are behavioral questions. So we really want to get into like the depth of how you think through problems, what kind of outcomes that happen at the end of our scenario, and really dive into what you learned from that, right? Because we're a learning environment. Everybody makes mistakes. Everybody's not great at everything, but we want to figure out who can really learn from a situation, evaluate how it went, and then move forward and apply that better next time. And we always want to improve. We always want to get better, and you can't do that if you stop when you make a mistake, or you make that mistake and you say, okay, well, I just stink at that. I'm not going to move forward, right? We really want to understand that and explain those situations to the best of your ability to show that value and show you what you learned and how you provided that value next time.
Come on, give us something. He put you on the spot, so.
Okay. So, Assalamu alaikum everybody. So, I'm Akbar Rafiuddin. I've been in the startup world for the last 15 to 20 years, probably hired over 100 people in that process, executives all the way down to entry-level talent. So I would say that without going into too much detail, the shortcut to learning how to interview, there's a couple of books out there. One book I would recommend to you is called The Ideal Team Player. It's written by a gentleman named Patrick Lencioni. Okay, Patrick Lencioni is a guru when it comes to leadership, and there's several out there, but that would be my shortcut, even to the hiring managers. For all of you who are hiring, read that book. The Ideal Team Player goes into 3 major areas. So those areas are humble, hungry, smart, right? So humble is how well is this candidate in self-awareness? Like how aware are they of their humility, of their ability to make a mistake, as you said. Hungry is there an issue with the willpower? How hungry is this person? And the third one is smart. So smart, not in the sense of are they intelligent, do they have good grades, do they score high on tests? Smart in how they deal with people, right? So that's the smartness part of it. So if you have a chance, read that book, and inshallah, that should be a great way for everybody, the hiring managers and the ones who are looking for getting hired. That will teach you a ton about it very quickly.
There's an exercise that you can do. It's called the Hierarchy of Values by Dr. DeMartini, I think. Just Google it. It's an exercise that you can do. It's a little quiz. What's around your space? So it's the top 3 things that have this or do that, and then you score yourself. The whole premise of the hierarchy of values is not like, hey, what's valuable to you? Oh yeah, honesty, integrity. No, this is what you actually manifest. Okay. So, if, for example, work, right, or entertainment is the top level, you will be willing to go through pleasure and pain, right? And you're hungry, right? And you have your whole body's in it, right? Your whole self is in it. The lower you go down on this hierarchy of values, the less willing you are to endure the pain for the gain. Okay? And so, yeah, you're pulling all-nighters so that you can play that video game, but you will not pull an all-nighter to study for that test. Right? So, that hierarchy of values, I really want you to, that first step in introspection that Brother Akbar was talking about, just know what your values are. Go through that quick assessment, figure out what's important to you, and by the way, they're not static. They change all of the time, and you can value engineer your own values. If you don't like what comes out, but do it honestly, you can say, you know what, I really want this to be higher, or I really want this to be lower. You have the capacity and the power to do that.
Thank you.
If I could just add to that, if you think about the sequence of events here, whatever you have in the resume, whatever you bring in the interview is a reflection of those values, and those values come from yourself, which means you have to build those things up that will add to those. And taking yourself away from those, that will detract from them as well. So use the time that you have wisely to understand who you are, get the advice and support that you need to understand where you need to go, and the steps that you need to take in order to get there.
But I think if you look at the goal of the interview process, right? So a lot of times we talk about what it is that we're going to present forward, but sometimes we don't take a look at what the person who's interviewing wants. And I think it can be simplified into 2 things. An interviewer is looking, can you do the job? And the interviewer is thinking, can I stand to be around this person for 8 hours a day? And everything that you're hearing here about all these different steps that you can do fits into one of those 2 things. So all the questions that you're going to hear that are more behavioral are either can the person problem solve, which is can they do the job, or how are they going to behave and interact with me and my team, which is can I stand to be around you. So if you keep it in your mind that I have to present myself, that I'm going to fit into the culture of this company, and I can do the job, all these other questions are going to fit in that. And all these things are good things to think about, but I think if you want to keep it simple, everything will funnel up into those two things.
Before we go to the audience, inshallah, I want to ask one last question for our panels for this phase of questions, and that is about answering questions that you don't know the answer to.
Don't BS. Don't lie. Don't make things up. Don't. I interviewed.
Bachelor's in science, right?
Do not. We can see. We know you're nervous, And we know that you might be new to the field or a new graduate. And just like Dan said, this is a learning environment. We expect you to learn on the job. We want to invest in you just as much as you want to invest in us. You're not just here for a paycheck, right? The best success is that you're not here for a paycheck. And if you don't know, like, I couldn't remember my biostats when I was interviewing at LBHM for biostatistician, right? And he goes, well, I see that you haven't really been working in biostatistics. I said, I haven't. The last time I learned that was during my MPH 5 years ago. And he's like, so why should I hire you? I'm like, because I'm a quick study and I have references and I know where to find the answers and I expect that I'm gonna learn with you. I'd like for you to be my mentor. He's like, okay, and he sat back and he was good, right? My interviewee, right, be authentic. The most important thing, and this is in our Islamic character, right, and it's a universal truth, guys, it's not just in Islam. If you're authentic to yourself, you will be authentic to the world, and then you will get things done, you will build. Right? Don't lie. You have nothing to prove. You really don't.
I don't think anybody else needs to comment on that one, right? Okay, go ahead.
Relative from, again, the reflective perspective. Number one, you don't BS, like was said. Number two, you learn from that. You say, next time if I'm in this position, how will I be able to better answer that question? And actually there's a third, which does come from our faith, which is, we say alhamdulillah. We say praise God in every situation. If that non-answer leads to me not getting that position, that's how it was meant to be. And next time I will do better and make sure I'm prepared for it, and maybe that is the opportunity that was being prepared for me, and this was not. So we always reflect on that in the positive, never take it as a negative. Everything is a learning and growing opportunity for us.
And I think, sorry.
No, you got it.
The other thing is sometimes, like, if you're in a technical interview and they're giving you a problem to actually solve, sometimes it's about what is your thought process. So I think there were a couple of examples that recently came out from Google or somebody, and it was, there were two power lines actually hanging, and you were trying to figure out the area under the curve or something, and it would take like advanced mathematics to figure it out. But, you know, for me, I would say, hey, I'm gonna estimate it, and this is how I would estimate it, because I don't know the formula off the top of my head. And they might just be looking to see how you think about things. Or they might give you something that's unsolvable. I remember a story from, you know, in India things are extremely competitive, and I remember a story of an interviewer who would say, okay, get up on the windowsill. So the guy would get up on the windowsill and he could say jump. And the people were automatically assuming that they had to jump out of the window, and the candidate who got the job was the one who just jumped down onto the floor. So sometimes they're just trying to figure out, do you know anything? I would never do that, because I don't think that. But it's about your thought process. It's not necessarily about getting the right answer.
Just to add to what Sister Shin was saying, right? Having integrity in the interview, right? Being able to not only identify your strengths but your weaknesses will help you, right? Having an honest and transparent conversation during the interview question, why are you looking for the job? Or why is your job, like even if you get restructured or you know, you're very early in this, but things change and evolve. As long as you're transparent, it makes the rest of the interview very easy. People will respect it. And if you don't know anything, it's okay, right? And the other piece, just to keep this in mind, collaboration is a very piece of the pie as part of the conversation, right? Because it's true. If you know someone who's an individual contributor coming in is going to take a problem that you've assigned to them and try to figure it out on their own, versus someone who's collaborating and telling you a scenario of how they collaborate, brought people into the pie.
I don't have cycles to spin, guys. Like everybody is rapid. How long is your attention span? A reel, a TikTok, right? And so I need to know that you're not going to go reinvent the wheel. There's so many resources at the place that you're going to be, whether you're going to school, whether you're going to get a graduate degree, or you're going to start working in a corporation. These corporations invest. LPHN invests in a humongous library, literally almost millions of dollars of their budget. Why? We don't want you to go back out and go back to the lab and remember that ox-redox equation. They want you to be able to find the expert who knows this. Literally, they can do it in their sleep, so that you can collaborate and build, because we're so much better as humans together. So what part of the together are you going to do?
Yeah, the big thing is to work as a team, right? You need to know that that person can come in and is immediately going to have an impact into that team, right? right? They might not know everything, they might not know every detail, but are they going to be a cancer and not be able to push the team? Then we don't want someone like that. But if it's somebody that's going to step in and communicate great, ask the questions, don't be afraid to ask questions, right? The people that kind of sit there and aren't willing to ask the questions don't end up getting the answers that we need, or it's delayed and it causes us other issues. You have to be able to recognize that in yourself and be willing to open up and ask those questions and help facilitate a team environment.
So there's one thing I was just, to the audience, Brandon, I think you should write these 2 books down, it will help you, I've read them too. It's Negotiating as if your life depended on it, and then Crucial Conversations, right? That book was introduced to me like last year, so I want to bring this up because I think it will be very valuable to you, that's it.
And you don't want to be part of the cancer, and you don't want to be the cancer, right? Low morale in a team can bring a company to its knees. And it gets so toxic that the whole purpose of why you were there is completely annihilated. Every single one of us contributes to an industry where we're saving lives or bettering lives. Okay, like all of my analytics are all about, hey, does this drug work or not, right? Or am I gonna kill people with this drug or not, right? Making sure the electricity's on. Do you know how many patients will die if they can't get oxygen or if they can't get their dialysis done when we have power outages for hot on storm duty? That's so that the patients in the hospitals don't lose their electricity because the generators are only meant to go so far. So don't underestimate why we do what we do and why you will do what you do. Find your why. And those books are excellent in finding the why and how to get to the why.
And I just wanted to add one more thing, because I think the original question was just about like, how do you answer a question that you don't know the answer to in the interview, right? So for the younger folks, you know, the honesty is a big part of it, right? But also it kind of comes down to like your actual intention and how you actually are as a person, because for me as a person interviewing you, I want to see you have that self-awareness that I don't know how to solve this, but also come across in a way where, but I'm still gonna figure out a way how to do this, right? I don't want it to be just someone, well, yeah, I don't know how to do that, and that's it. I want someone that's gonna look at, well, one, I can admit the fact that I don't know the answer, but I can also come across and let you know that I will find a way to solve this problem, right? But don't say that in an interview if you really don't care about solving the problem. Like, you have to care. If you care, then that's when you're gonna actually follow up with those, and that's what's gonna come across as you progress throughout your career.
So now we're gonna move to the audience. And my question to you, and I wanna hear from the youth, is I want you guys to throw out some really good questions to our panelists. Okay? And they're gonna judge whether it's a good question or not. Right? Or they're gonna direct you towards maybe a better way to ask that question. We wanna start with Saad Afzal.
Wait, so is it a question, like an interview question?
You're asking a question now? Yes, interview question. A good interview question.
How to get money?
Somebody said how to make money. That's the first question you're gonna ask? Timing is also important, right? When to ask about wages, when to ask about salary, when not to, etc.
I got a question.
Go for it. We can hear him. Sodom. We can hear him. We can hear him.
So actually, I got asked this question before. So the question was, what state would you take out, or if you had a chance to take out a state from the United States, which state would you take out?
If you had the choice to remove one state
And why? It's easy.
from the United States, the 50 states, which state would that be and why?
This is a real question I got.
What did you answer? Let's hear your answer.
No, we have that. We have that.
Okay, wait, okay. Let's answer first.
So we don't, so we're not biased. So I'll say that I'm not gonna take any of them out, and I would add Washington DC and Puerto Rico, and all of the territories as states. And they're gonna tell me, but why? Because I can't take part of my country out, right? And I believe in the collective good, right? So all the parts are better than the whole, and all the whole is better than the sum of the parts. So I believe, right, that I lived in DC, I had the taxation without representation. I know how hard it is to get things done for my quality of life. I don't have good quality of life, we know Muslims, so they beta, right? We made concessions for our security and prosperity, right? It's not we need security and prosperity as humans to thrive. And that's our job, is to thrive on this earth.
If I was asked that question, it will really come down to two things. The first, but so I want to explain where I get to that answer. So the first thing would be, what state am I getting interviewed in, right? Because that's important. Because you don't want to eliminate that state, right? The second part of it would be, again, for me, and I think we kind of joke around about this sometimes at work. If you have a sports team that you're a fan of, especially if you're a Giants or Eagles fan, you automatically text us, get rid of them because the Dallas Cowboys don't really like them. Nobody wants to see them around, and that would be my answer.
So let's get a little bit of humor to lighten it, right? So it also opens up to his personality, you know, and so you can kind of use it to your advantage or your disadvantage,
I
right?
want
So.
to hear what Sam said. What was your answer?
My answer? I said Florida.
He got the job.
I just mentioned that, Florida's retirement state. I'm a young guy. I want to, really push myself as much as I can at the moment. So it's not really where I want to see myself being at the moment. So it's something that just crossed my mind.
I just want you to know that your brother from fire.
I would have said Kentucky. And the reason why is, I think, isn't that where
Also,
Mitch
Canada,
McConnell's
John.
Mitch who?
from? Mitch McConnell.
You asking the wrong person. I don't even know who it is.
So I'd say we get rid of Kentucky, we get rid of him, and then we don't have to worry. But you want to be careful. You might give that answer in New York, but you wouldn't give it in the South, because you're flipping it. Is the guy Republican or is the guy Democrat? So usually you want to stay away from politics. But since I don't care as much, I would have said.
If I would answer a little bit differently, I would have gotten rid of either North or South Dakota, because number one, if we're getting rid of it, land's not going anywhere. Why do we have two Dakotas? It's not one.
I guess we got to get rid of the Carolinas too, huh?
We made it to
Okay, we just make it one Carolina, huh?
Dakota.
Okay, as a poet, maybe I would answer the state of poverty. Or, okay, I'm flattered, mashallah. I can sleep well tonight. What else we got coming from our audience? We really want to hear from you guys because we're here to benefit you.
What is the environment of the company? What's the culture of the company? Like, how would you as an interviewer answer that question?
That's a really critical question on your interview. Just like we're trying to size you up, if we want to work with you, if we can tolerate you, you have to size us up and see if you're willing to take us on, right? I work for SAS. Does anybody know SAS?
Yes.
Okay, SAS is a really great analytics company. You know where the headquarters are? North Carolina. North Carolina, right? And it's very homogenous.
Yeah.
Okay, no offense to our friends, the white people. Okay? On my census, I have to write that I'm white too, because I'm from Egypt, or my parents. But there are no women, there are no people of color. I am the diversity, right? And when I asked them, because I grew up in an era, and in an area where there wasn't a lot of diversity, I was used to it. I had thick skin, right? I'll rub my elbows with you and I'll knock you down. And I know that I can't make a mistake and I can't do this. That my standards must be higher because I wear hijab and clearly I like my colors, right? And I'm not afraid to use my voice. And I have to be really on top of my scientific game because I'm hired as a subject matter expert. I can't make a mistake. Other people I brought in they looked like the rest of them. I mean, I knew that they were Arab, they were Lebanese, but yeah, not diverse enough, right? I had a Filipino friend, right? He's like, man, Shireen, he's like, I'm going to this company, come with me, it's more diverse. That was his preference and where he wanted to be able to thrive, where he saw himself able to thrive, was a different culture than what SAS had to offer. Right? And so knowing what you're willing be function in it, how you know, how you define your success, right? And success isn't just, hey, did I make bank today? Hey, did I get my bonus today? It's, can I be my best self today? And every day that I'm on the job. And the days that I can't, can I rebound from it? Really, that's what you need to assess. So we get that question all the time. We're a global company, right? But the way we consider ourselves global is Asia Pac stays in Asia Pac, EMEA stays in EMEA, right, in Europe, Latin America, LATAM stays in LATAM, and the US is very a stereotypical 1980s corporation. Like it hasn't grown. Technology's grown, okay, but the culture is a very stereotypical culture.
So if you were asked, what would your answer be to the person?
So I would tell them we are a very hungry and curious. I can't talk about my diversity. We're not diverse, right? But we're very hungry and we're very curious, and we love to save lives, right? And that's what drives my team, honestly. Like, and I can focus on the work that we do. I just can't, and that's why they've accepted me, because they see where I'm coming, right? But and now I'm the, hey Sharina, I need you on this call, right? Like in 5 minutes, dude, I have 3 other customer calls, I can't be on the call. But you make your own worth and your own value, but that's my culture. My group can say that we're curious and that we want to save lives.
I think it's unfortunate we won't have enough time to really go more in depth about this conversation that we're having now. But it is a company that hopefully this won't be the last career summit. I think we're going to do more workshopping in the future as well. But I did want to hone in a little bit more, to get a little bit more in depth. What is a bad question?
From who?
How much money do you make?
How much money do you make to the actual interview? Where? Okay.
So I would say on top of that, so if you're asking that, that means you didn't do your research, right? So you should have an understanding of what that position is, what the value of that position is. There's a lot of other information that you can do personally that you don't need to know that information. Okay, when it comes and they lowball you, then yeah, hey, listen, this is the market value for this position. And if you have that, that helps support if there's a salary range you're looking for. But I also want to go back to your question about culture. I think that's extremely important that a lot of interviewees do not understand it. That's your opportunity to see if this is somebody you want to work with. Because you can see if they're going to BS. You can see if they're going to give you a real answer. And if you don't see that value in them, even if they offer to you, it might not be a position that would really make sense for you because it's not a cultural fit for you. And you should be able to have a couple of those hard questions that really have an interviewer sit back and be like, oh man, like that, I really got to think about this. I wasn't expecting that. Right? And then you get to catch them off guard a little bit and really see that value if it's a company that you want to work for.
I think piggybacking off of what you said, maybe worded a different way on the second question that you had is, you don't want to ask any question that is publicly available on the internet, on the company's website, because again, it shows that you did not do research, and you weren't smart enough to think of the right questions to ask this person. So I think that's the worst one, aside from something stupid like, yeah, how much money do you make, or something that would be offensive, or something like that. But yeah, the questions that you should be asking are either non-public information that affect the work, or like you said, what's the culture like here? What's a typical day here? The stuff that you can't get that you want to know for yourself. Because look, the first couple of interviews, I always say, are about you selling yourself to the company. If you make it through the interview process and you're at your third interview, you can really start asking the in-depth questions, and you know more at that point to ask. So, like I said in the beginning, your resume is to get you in the door. The first interview is to get you to the second interview, the second to the third, and the third to an offer, right? So it's a series of steps. And in the beginning, it's more about what you can do for them. As you move along, it's more about what they can do for you so that it does become that, win-win situation. And I mean, I had an interview the other day. I was interviewing a young lady, and she talked to me for about an hour, and I don't know why I didn't cut the interview off. Like I was kicking myself, but she literally went through for a whole hour about all the jobs she had, and how they failed her and didn't give her what she needed. She didn't tell me what she could do for our company. She didn't tell me what she did at those companies. She just told me, well, you know, they didn't let me do this, and they didn't send me to this training, and they didn't do this, and they didn't do this. And I'm like, okay, I don't know anything about you now. And it was kind of a useless interview and a waste of my time.
So the worst question that I probably asked as an interviewer was this: going into my senior year of college, and we were interviewing a new coach. So we were in the driver's seat, but if he gets the job, he's going to be your coach the next year. So the table will turn in that situation. And he had a player who was really, really talented. His last name was Forte, at Brown University, but he had a bad senior year. And I was approaching my senior year, so I wanted to know what happened within the culture of that team or within that player that, you know, turned like such a great trajectory into a very, very poor result in the senior year. And so I asked Coach Miller that question, and he bachelor's in science. He BS'd it, right? And we didn't want him as a coach, but he ended up getting the job, right? And alhamdulillah, we actually won the championship that year as well. But that was something that he never let go as a coach, and he actually mentioned it in the senior banquet that year. We laughed about it at the end of it, you know, but he appreciated that question as well because he probably knows that he didn't have a good answer for it, but he also knew that he was going to have to be on top of his game that year as a coach, and we weren't going to let anything kind of, you know, slide, and that we had the highest expectations for our team, you know. So timing and space, circumstance is always important as well as to what type of question you're going to ask and when, right? So we'll have one more question, I think, and some last advices from our panel, and then we'll close out. Wait, do we have any sisters? Any questions? All right, you're good.
My question is, as an interviewer, do you like interviewees who share their more professional side or their more personal side, or is it a mixture of both?
Too much of your personal business could definitely go wrong.
I can fight this all. The answer is both, and keep the context in mind. And I say this to the people I was looking at the resumes as well, is that the person you're talking to is going to be going through a lot of other candidates as well. You have to find a way to distinguish yourself from everybody else in the field. So that fight is not about that interviewer, that conversation, the points that you're raising. It's about everybody else who may be better qualified in one way or another. So you have to find the right balance, but make sure your personality comes out to the point where whoever is talking to you says, I want that person to be on my side. I want this person to be on my team to help me and find a way to contribute with them. Part of that is knowing your character and your personality that comes out through your activities and who you are and how you contribute to the world. And part of it is from your academic or your experience and your professional competence as well.
Have you ever heard the word work fam? Right? My work fam. These are the people that you are spending 8 hours at least, in some cases longer, right? Together, online, virtually, or in the office. I need to be able to know a little more about your drive. And you can give me lip service. You can, yeah, everybody knows all the right things to say. But when you share a little personal story in context, I don't want like all your dirt. It shows me what personality traits you have, and it also tells me if you really can be my work family, right? And it tells me why. It gives me the why, right? I couldn't figure out your why. It gives me the why, right? I want to save the world. Great, why? Why do you feel that you're capable and you're driven to save the world, right? And, you know, I'm a problem solver. Why do you think I wanted to do infectious diseases? Because I want to do HIV. I figured out that Egypt at the time, when I was doing my master's, had the lowest HIV infection rate in the world. I was like, low prevalence. I want to know what they're doing right, because I know that Egypt and Cairo specifically, it ain't holy, right? Like, we've got the culture, we've always had the culture, right? Since the turn of the century. And so I geared all of my research towards that. I actually went to Egypt to do my CAP study, my knowledge, attitudes, and practices, because they weren't following universal precautions. They weren't using like gloves the way they were supposed to, or masks or anything like that. right? And so when you're able to, what was driving me? I figured that if I could find this solution as to why they did it, why they were successful, I could problem solve in Uganda, which I ended up going to Uganda anyways, right? I figured if I could find out what they're doing right, I can take it down to wherever, right? I can take it down to South Africa, where the prevalence rate of HIV and AIDS at the time was 50%. So high that for every job opening that they had in the mines, they would hire 2 people because within 6 months, one of them would be dead. Right? And so that was my drive, right? Okay, fine. I didn't have HIV. I didn't know anybody personally with HIV, right? But I like to solve problems. So I saw Dr. Ho's article on Time Magazine. I'm like, I'm going to do that. I'm going to find the cure to HIV. And I didn't, but I found other ways to address it.
All right, so knowing your why, right?
I think, I think also along with that, a lot of it is situational. I think if you look at the answers that everyone's giving, we all have different things that we focus on. And so I think you as an interviewee have to be able to read the person who's asking the questions. You might get someone who's extremely technical and only cares about the technical. You might get someone who's only looking at the behavioral. You might get someone who's doing both and is going to mix it up. So I think it's very important to be aware enough of who's asking the question, so you've had to have done your research. It's okay to stalk them on LinkedIn and see what kind of person they are. You can find out a lot on LinkedIn. So this pre-interview preparation is so important. But you have to have enough, you have to have practiced, you have to have done your research, so that when you're sitting in front of that person, you can be thinking, what does he mean by that question? What does she want to get out of this question? It's not always an answer. It could be something else. So you've got to be prepared so that you can make sure that you're answering what they want. And it's okay to say, I don't quite understand what you're asking. Can you clarify a little bit? But you really want to understand what they're trying to get at. And that's where you'll know how technical to get, how behavioral to get, etc.
I think for us, when we do interviews, like, you know, the balance between personal and technical, there's a fine line there, because you can have 5 people that answer the technical question the same exact way, but how do we choose between those people, right? Some of that may come from the personal information that they may be able to add in a story to help describe a way that they were able to solve a problem. That was one of the questions, right? I think when we did the interview today, Akbar, I think, you know, I gave you that feedback back where, you know, the way you answer the question and you add a personal touch to it, and I'm able to visualize you in that situation in the past, working on this problem, fixing it, and what the result was. It makes it very clear for me to be able to see those steps happening, and kind of, you know, even if I don't think you may be able to solve a specific question, I see the way your mind works and how that process goes through your mind. It makes it much more easier for me to like you as a person and feel like you're somebody I can work with, because you have that open-mindedness and you're honest and you're basically, you know, being able to explain to me, using your personal characteristics, your personal background, your stories, show me that this is how and this is why I'm able to, you know, fit in with your team.
I think we're gonna sum it up there, inshallah ta'ala. I'm sure that most of you have access to at least one person on this panel pretty much on a day-to-day, week-to-week basis. So alhamdulillah, continue to keep those networks in place. And if you have any further questions, feel free, right? I'm not putting you guys up for service when you're not available, right? Feel free to ask, you know, these distinguished people, inshallah, in whatever field. Also, I was reminded to mention the follow-up survey, right? What is it called? Feedback survey, right? Is it in the email already, or it's coming out soon?
It's gonna come out soon.
Okay, please give us feedback. Put your suggestions in so that we can continue to improve upon what we started today. I think this is the first time that we've ever done this. Alhamdulillah, hopefully it won't be the last. So with that being said, I'm gonna close out the panel. What is after this?
Clean up.
I have one thing if you don't mind.
Yes, it's
One
good.
of the important skills you should hopefully get out of this is to be able to think on your feet. Be ready in any situation to be able to do something or say something. So in that vein, I'm going to put somebody on the spot.
Go ahead.
So, Aslan, based on our conversation, tell us about why you have a career choice of cybersecurity. So please stand up and share that with everybody.
I have a career choice in cybersecurity because I want to help improve the lives of others, help them secure their privacy and their daily needs, and overall make their lives better. So yeah.
Thank you. Rehan, same question, but project, remember, get up and
So I'm like into content creation.
put your mask down so we can.
I look into content creation and I know like in social media, YouTube, it could be threatening for cyber attacks. So I want to help secure the environment for all those attacks. And yeah.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
No, really not. So I hope that this program, the summit today has been beneficial for you all. If there's nobody else that wants to make any comments, closing comments.
Listen, there are laws that protect you, okay, as an employee and as a manager. I want you, before you go on any interview, to go look them up. It's all in the Department of Labor. You can find a lot of articles about it. What you're allowed to be asked in an interview, what you're not allowed to be asked, how you're allowed to, as a Muslim, practice in your company. CARE has done a wonderful job of knowing your Muslim rights and your freedom of spirituality and religion, as well as knowing what you, as an employee, what rights you have. Make sure that you're never abused on the job, ever. Right? They're not allowed to ask you how many kids you have. Right? They're not allowed to ask you if you're married or not. Right? They're not allowed to even though they tried with me. Oh, I heard you had kids. They didn't technically ask me, right? And so how are you going to be able to handle the travel, right? And it was a fair concern on their part because I traveled every single week in 2019, but they were not legally allowed. So know your rights, especially the women in this room. Your rights to bear children and motherhood and still be employed and have a career is critical for you to know. They may not fire you because you're pregnant. They may not fire you because you plan on having a family and you might contend from them. You're not allowed. They're not allowed. Know your rights and practice and execute your rights.
Just a quick thing. I think, mashallah, from what you're hearing today, one of the takeaways should be that a lot of the concepts we're talking about are not things we invented, and they're not things that we necessarily learned from experience. Obviously, some of it is experience, but a lot of it is from books. So one of the mistakes I made early on in my career is I didn't read enough professional books, right? Books that teach you about personality types, books that teach you about what I mentioned to you about hungry, humble, smart. And then there's also another piece of it and I'll give this to you as sort of a beginning with the end in mind type of concept, which is if I'm looking to evaluate someone because they're not performing in their role and we're thinking about firing them, the three areas where we look, and obviously, as you're interviewing, think about this when you're dealing with an interviewer and you want to understand their personality, figuring out the culture of that company. Culture is not only through the interviewer, culture is also you doing your research. It's kind of like the marriage game. When you're about to get married, you don't investigate that person just on face value. You go find their network and you find out what are they like in the community, what is their family like. Same thing with the role that you're looking for in a company is you can find other ways to get inside that company to figure out what is that corporate culture or what is that company's culture. So the last thing, when we're looking to fire somebody, not looking to fire somebody, but if somebody is potentially in that hot seat, the three areas where we look is willpower. Is it a problem of willpower? Is it a problem of skills? Or is it a problem of values? Sister Shireen talked about values, like figuring out what your values are. There are people who are extremely talented, right? Very motivated, but they are just the worst person to talk to. They're rude, they're condescending. So know your values, and that's, I would say, just, there's a lot to learn here. We can't do it in this much time. I think you'll have to do your reading, you'll have to do your research, but inshallah, you learn something from this.
Can I just say one quick thing? I'll just make it quick enough. I brought this up because I had a conversation with my brother because I work with a lot of college students. I think as Muslims, the one thing we always have to keep in mind, the best thing that we bring into any situation is the fact that Allah chose us to be Muslim. We're taught, right? كُنْتُمْ خَيْرَ أُمَّةٍ أُخْرِجَتْ لِلنَّاسِ. Allah already told us, you are the best. Why? Because you're enjoying what is right and forbidden what is wrong and you believe in Allah. We take that into any situation that we go into. Obviously, there's some technical stuff about, interview, but we cannot forget that Allah has chosen us to be Muslim, and that is the greatest gift that we can bring into any situation, whether it's college or employment. So please don't forget that as you're preparing to go into these professional roles, and even as you're preparing to go into college.
I was gonna say, put your trust in Allah. You beat me to it. Alright. This conversation is going good. Right. But also, and I think she was touching on this, is like, your dignity is important. And I think the question about, right, jumping and telling them to jump and stuff like that, like, your dignity is important. Like, no job is worth your dignity at the end of the day, right? So keep that in mind before you go into that door. It's like, you might be tested in that environment, and you might not get the job. But at the end of the day, you still maintain your integrity, your dignity, and your honor, and no rejection can ever take that away from you. So just, keep that in mind as well. You're gonna go through the process. There's gonna be ups and downs, right? But every time we fall down, it's an opportunity to get back up, but also an opportunity to learn from our mistakes, right? And Allah is the best of planners, and He is the best of those who guides. And inshallah, He has written for us all success as long as we follow His path. Allahumma ameen. Subhanaka Allahumma wa bihamdik wa ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta wa astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Wal 'asri inna al-insana lafi khusr illa alladhina amanu wa amilus solihati wa tawassaw bil haqqi wa tawassaw bis sabr. Barakallahu feekum. Thank you all. Mashallah. And assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Also